You don't realize you've been priced until someone hands you the receipt. I understood that on a Wednesday night in February, standing in my kitchen with a scratch-off ticket in one hand and my phone lighting up with the 43rd call I hadn't answered. The ticket was worth something north of $60 million. The calls were from people who'd spent 3 decades teaching me I was worth considerably less. My name is Claire Dennison. I'm 31 years old, and I've been a NICU nurse for 7 years. I'm good at keeping my face neutral when the numbers on the monitor start going the wrong direction. That skill turned out to be useful in places I never expected. February started the way it always does in my family, with my younger brother's birthday dinner at our parents' house outside Portland. I drove up from my apartment in Beaverton on a Tuesday evening, the kind of cold, wet Pacific Northwest night where the windshield wipers can't quite keep up. I got there early, I always do. Not because anyone asked me to, but because someone needs to set the table and my brother Ethan certainly wasn't going to do it. He'd arrive late with his girlfriend Madison, and my mother would light up like he'd just returned from war instead of the gym across town where he works as a personal trainer. I don't resent Ethan. That's important to say up front because this isn't a story about hating your sibling. Ethan is charming and funny and genuinely doesn't notice that the center of every room rearranges itself around him. He's 27 and still figuring his life out, which in our family is treated like an adventure. When I was 27 and figuring my life out, it was treated like something I should have handled more quietly. The dinner was fine. Ethan opened his gifts, a weekend ski pass from our parents, expensive, the kind they'd researched, new workout gear, a Venmo from our aunt with more zeros than she'd ever sent me. Then my mother handed me something across the table with a smile that I've learned to read over the years, fond, but distant, the smile you give someone you're confident won't make a fuss. Almost forgot, she said, saw this and thought of you. It was a scratch-off ticket, one of the $5 ones, stuck inside a generic birthday card even though my birthday is in October. The card said, "Congratulations," on the front. Inside, my father had written, "Maybe you'll finally get lucky." The table laughed. Not meanly, it wasn't mean, it was warm, familial laughter, the kind that assumes everyone's in on the joke. Ethan grinned and said, "Hey, that's more than I'd bet on you," and Madison giggled, and my mother said, "Oh, stop," in the tone that means don't actually stop. I smiled. I said, "Thanks, Dad." I put the card in my coat pocket and stayed for cake. Here's what I need you to understand before the number gets too big to see around. I had built a good life. I worked in one of the most emotionally demanding units in the hospital. I held newborns who weren't sure yet if they wanted to stay. I stood next to mothers who were too afraid to hope and fathers who didn't know what to do with their hands. I was good at my job. I was good at staying steady. Outside of work, I had a small circle of friends who actually called me back. I had a savings account I'd filled myself, line by line, shift by shift. I had a 1-bedroom apartment with good light and a decent couch and no one telling me how to arrange the furniture. I didn't need my parents. That's what I told myself. And it was almost true. The problem was that not needing them had become my entire identity in the family structure. Claire's independent. Claire's got it handled. Claire doesn't ask for help, so we don't offer. My brother needed help constantly, with rent, with car payments, with the gap between what he earned and what he wanted to spend, and every time, my parents filled it, not because they were bad people, but because need, in our family, was a language they understood. Self-sufficiency was a language they mistook for not caring. I mistook it for that too, for a long time. The scratch-off sat on my counter for 11 days. I didn't throw it away, which should have told me something. I also didn't scratch it, which should have told me something else. It just sat there next to my coffee maker, a little rectangle of cheap cardboard, my father's handwriting facing up. "Maybe you'll finally get lucky." I'd look at it in the morning while the kettle heated. I'd look at it at night when I came home after a shift where a micro-preemie coded twice and we got her back both times and I held her mother while she sobbed into my scrubs. I didn't know yet what I was waiting for. On the 11th night, a Thursday, I got home at midnight after losing a baby we'd been fighting for 6 weeks. Not my patient directly, but you lose them all a little when you work a unit that small. Everyone went quiet when the monitor flatlined. We'd all been rooting for him. I came home, poured a glass of wine I didn't want, and saw the ticket. And I thought, in the punchy, exhausted logic of someone who just watched something unfair happen, fine, let's see how lucky I am. I used a quarter from the jar by the door. I scratched the first panel, matched. Second panel, matched. I stopped. I set the coin down carefully, the way you put down a scalpel when you realize you've cut deeper than you meant to. I read the fine print. I matched the numbers again, then a third time, slower, because my hands already knew something my brain was still catching up to. The ticket was worth $64 million. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat down on my kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet and I held the ticket in both hands and I thought, With perfect clarity, I can't tell them. That instinct, the one that said don't call, don't text, don't say a word, is the only reason I still have the money. I know how that sounds, like I'm paranoid or cold. But I need you to understand what I already understood about my family in that moment on the kitchen floor. If I called my mother, she would cry, she would be happy for me, genuinely, for about 4 minutes, and then she would start thinking about Ethan's student loans, about the roof they'd been putting off, about how family takes care of family, and wasn't it amazing that this blessing had come to all of us right when we needed it? If I told my father, he'd make a joke to cover how uncomfortable he was, and then he'd mention, casually, like it just occurred to him, that Ethan's gym idea could really take off with the right investment. If I told Ethan, he'd be ecstatic, he'd hug me and mean it, and within a week, he'd start talking about opportunities, partnerships, ways we could do something really cool together now that I had the resources. None of them would demand anything. That's not how it works in families like mine. They just expect, the way they'd always expected that I'd handle things, that I'd be reasonable, that I'd share. Because Claire's generous, Claire's a nurse, she cares about people. And I'd feel the weight of that expectation every day for the rest of my life, and I'd either give in and spend the next 30 years funding everyone else's choices, or I'd say no and become the selfish daughter who won the lottery and abandoned her family. Sitting on that floor, I saw both futures clearly. So I chose a third one. I chose silence. I didn't go to work the next day. I called in for the first time in 2 years and I told them I had a family emergency, which felt true enough. Then I did what I do when I'm scared, I made a list. Do not tell anyone. Find a lawyer. Do not buy anything. Do not change anything. See number 1 again. By noon, I'd found an attorney who specialized in lottery winners. Her name was Ruth Kahale, and the first thing she said when I walked into her office was, "Have you told anyone?" No. She smiled for the first time. Then you might actually be okay. Ruth taught me something I didn't know. In Oregon, you can claim a lottery prize through a trust. Your name never has to go public. The trust claims the ticket, the trust holds the money, and the only thing the world ever knows is that someone won. Not Claire Dennison, NICU nurse, daughter, sister. Just, someone. You've got a narrow window, Ruth said. The longer you wait, the more people start asking questions. But if we move now, we can do this cleanly. We spent the next 8 days building the structure, a trust with a purposely boring name. Ruth's firm as trustee, clean, quiet, untraceable to me. On the 9th day, the trust claimed the ticket. On the 10th day, the money, $41 million after taxes and the lump sum discount, landed in accounts I was still learning to understand. On the 11th day, I went back to work. I need you to sit with that for a second, because it's the part people never believe. I won $64 million and I went back to work. I showed up for my shift, I put on the same scrubs, I washed my hands in the same sink, I held the same tiny, fragile hands and I spoke in the same calm voice to the same terrified parents. And no one knew. The attending asked how I was doing, and I said, "Good, thanks," and I meant it. Because here's what I learned in those 11 days of silence. The money didn't change who I was. But it clarified it. For the first time in my adult life, I got to ask myself, what do I actually want? Not what would make my family stop asking, not what would prove I was grateful or generous or worthy. What did I want? The answer surprised me. I wanted to keep working, I wanted my same apartment, I wanted to stop performing independence like it was a virtue and start living it like a choice. And I wanted, this was the part that sat in my chest like a stone, I wanted the people who'd loved me when I had nothing to know they'd been right about me. I started there. My supervisor at the hospital, Denise, had been fighting for 2 years to get funding for a family relief fund, small grants to help parents who couldn't afford to stay near the hospital while their babies fought in our unit. The hospital kept saying no, budget constraints, priorities elsewhere. I called Ruth. I want to fund it, I said, fully, anonymously. How much? Enough that she never has to beg for it again. 3 days later, Denise came into the break room crying. Someone, she didn't know who, had donated $500,000 to the family fund, unrestricted, permanent. I cried with her. She had no idea it was me. That felt clean. The second person I thought of was my friend Jana. Jana and I went through nursing school together. She graduated with honors and $60,000 in debt, and she'd been chipping at it for 6 years while working night shifts and raising 2 kids alone after her ex stopped paying support. She never complained, not once. But I'd seen her face when she checked her bank account. I'd watched her do the math on whether she could afford the field trip fee for her daughter. I paid off her loans, all of them. Anonymously, through a loan forgiveness program I had Ruth create that made it look like a clerical review, not a gift. She called me the night she found out, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. It's gone, Claire, all of it. They said there was an error in the calculation and I don't owe anything and That's amazing, I said. I don't know what I did to deserve this. You stayed kind when it would have been easier not to, I thought. Sometimes the universe gets it right, I said instead. By the time my family found out, I'd given away almost $4 million. Not to them. To the people who'd valued me when I was worth nothing on paper. The story broke 5 weeks after I'd claimed the ticket. It was a small article in the local paper. Oregon lottery winner claims $64 million prize, identity sealed in trust. The article noted that the ticket had been sold at a convenience store in Hillsborough. It didn't name me, it couldn't. But my family put it together anyway. It was my mother who figured it out first, or maybe Ethan, I'm still not sure, but the calls started on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at work. My phone was in my locker, so I didn't see them in real time. I saw them after my shift. 26 missed calls. Texts from my mother, honey, call me, it's important. From my father, Claire, we need to talk. From Ethan, yo, did you win the lottery? Call me back. From numbers I didn't recognize. From my aunt. From Madison, my brother's girlfriend, which was how I knew it was bad. I stood in the hospital parking lot with my phone in my hand, the screen lighting up again, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not fear. Relief. Because now I'd get to see exactly who they were when they thought I had something they needed. I didn't call back that night. Or the next day. I let it build. The texts got more frantic. Claire, please, we're worried. Are you okay? We love you so much. My brothers, this is crazy, let's celebrate. My mother's, sweetheart, family sticks together, call me. And then, on the third day, my father's. We gave you that ticket, don't forget that. There it was. I screenshotted it. Not because I needed proof, I already knew, but because I wanted to remember the exact moment the ask became a claim. I finally responded on Thursday. One text to the family group chat I'd been added to without asking. I'll come to Sunday dinner, we can talk then. The relief in their responses was immediate. Thank God. We love you. Can't wait to see you. I turned off my phone and went to my closet. I pulled down a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were things I'd kept without fully knowing why. A birthday card from when I turned 19, inside, a gift card to a restaurant that had closed, expired. A Christmas present from when I was 24, a candle, still in the wrapper, with someone else's name on the gift receipt. A keychain from a gas station. Socks. A mug that said, "World's Best Teacher," that my mother had given me with a shrug and well, close enough. Years of it. A catalog of being an afterthought. And on top, I placed the scratch-off's twin, the cardboard sleeve it had come in, and my father's handwriting on the birthday card. Maybe you'll finally get lucky. I looked at it for a long time. Then I put the box in my bag. Sunday dinner was at their house, same as always. I arrived on time. My mother opened the door and pulled me into a hug that lasted 5 seconds longer than any hug she'd given me in a decade. There she is, she said, and her eyes were shining. My father stood when I came into the living room. Ethan was already there, bouncing on his feet, and Madison smiled too wide, and I saw it all at once. The performance. The warmth I'd spent 31 years wishing for, finally on offer now that I'd won something they wanted. We sat down to dinner. My mother had made my favorite, except it wasn't actually my favorite, it was Ethan's, but no one noticed. They asked how I was, they asked about work, they didn't ask about the money directly, not yet. They were waiting for me to bring it up. So I did. I know you all heard about the lottery ticket, I said. The room went still in the way a room does when everyone's been waiting for the same thing. My mother's face was so hopeful it hurt to look at. We're just so happy for you, honey, she said. It's incredible, Ethan added. My father nodded. Life-changing. It is, I said. I reached into my bag. I wanted to show you all something. I pulled out the box and set it on the table. My mother frowned. What's that? It's every gift you've given me in the last 12 years. I opened it. I took out the expired gift card, the regifted candle, the teacher mug, the gas station keychain. I laid them out one by one on the table while my family watched in silence. And then I took out the card. Maybe you'll finally get lucky. I set it in the center. This is the ticket you gave me, I said quietly, at Ethan's birthday dinner. You handed it to me as a joke. Claire, my mother started. It was worth $64 million. The air left the room. I claimed it 5 weeks ago, through a trust, Which is why it took you this long to figure out it was me. My father's face had gone white. Ethan looked between me and the card, his mouth open. And in those 5 weeks, I continued, before any of you called, I gave away $4 million. My mother's hand went to her chest. I paid off my friend Jana's student loans. I funded the family relief program at the hospital. I'm setting up a scholarship for nursing students who are paying their own way through school the way I did. I looked at each of them. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand, I didn't forget about you. Me da choice. Claire, we're your family, my mother's voice cracked. You gave me a scratch-off ticket as a punchline, I said. You've given me expired gift cards and clearance candles and things with other people's names on them for over a decade, and I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need you to try. I picked up the card. But this made it clear, you valued me at $5, and the only reason you're all here right now, the only reason I'm getting hugs and phone calls and invitations, is because the $5 turned into 60 million. That's not fair, Ethan said, but his voice was small. Isn't it? My father cleared his throat. We gave you that ticket, Claire. I turned to him. You did. I let that sit. And I'll never forget it. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just stood up, gathered the box, and looked at my mother. I'm not cutting you off, I'm not disappearing, but I need you to understand that I'm not funding anyone in this room, not your roof, not Ethan's gym, not anything. After everything we've done for you? My mother whispered. I looked at the pile of gifts on the table. Yes, I said, after everything. I left. I drove home in silence, and when I got to my apartment, I sat on my couch in the dark and waited to feel something big. Grief, maybe, or anger. But what I felt was lighter. The fallout was predictable. My mother called me selfish to anyone who'd listen. Ethan stopped texting. My father sent one email with the subject line, disappointed, which I deleted without reading. But Ruth called me a week later. Your brother's girlfriend reached out to a tabloid, she said, tried to sell a story about you. They can't confirm your identity because of the trust, so it went nowhere, but I thought you should know. I wasn't surprised. Thanks for the heads up. Claire? Yeah? You did this right. I've seen 100 lottery winners. Most of them lose everything within 5 years. You're not going to be one of them. 3 months later, my mother sent a card. Not a text, a real card, in the mail. Inside, she'd written, I'm sorry for the gifts, I didn't realize. It wasn't enough. But it was something. I didn't throw it away. I still work at the hospital. I still live in a 1-bedroom, though now it has a view. I drive a car that doesn't make a weird noise when I brake. And once a month, I sit down with Ruth and we pick a new person or program to fund quietly, carefully, in ways that don't tie back to me. Last month, we paid for a single mother's rent for a year after I saw her crying in the NICU hallway. The month before, we funded art supplies for an underfunded school. Small things, big things. Things that matter to people who didn't price me first. Jana knows now. I told her last month over wine, and she cried again, and then she laughed, and then she said, You're the same person you were before. I know, I said. Good. If you're the person in your family who's always been easy, who didn't ask for much, so you stopped getting much, I need you to hear this. You're not imagining it. And you don't owe anyone access to the life you built while they weren't paying attention. The people who loved you at your smallest will still love you at your largest. Everyone else is just doing math. I keep the card now in a drawer, not on the fridge. I don't need the reminder anymore. I know what I'm worth. And it was never $5.